Hi Mum, you do everything for everyone else. Let me help you make your life easier. Quick, short information to make you empowered and remind you why you are so important. Because if you don't know what's on the menu, how can you choose what's right for you? Hi, I'm Elena, Director of my private practice Supportive Therapy, an everyday Aussie mum trying not to lose my biscuits at my kids. As a mental health professional, I'm here to share my secrets so no other mother feels alone or powerless. Knowledge is power, and I want you to be powerful. Think of it like I'm your mindset coach through all of this. Everything is backed by science and psychology. I believe in you, and I want you to be the best version of yourself. To be happy and to feel in control, you need to be mentally strong. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is going to be a bit of a difficult topic. It's going to be on coercive control. So if there are any concerns for you, if there's any triggers with anything, if you want to reach out for me, that would be lovely by contacting me either on my socials, emails, website. But just be aware before we begin, it might be a little bit triggering for some people, and especially even this isn't for you, even if this is for someone that you know. And then once you can really understand what coercive control is, what they might be going through, then it can help you support them as well. Because generally people that are going through it don't look for a lot of support, and that's because of embarrassment, shame, humiliation, and they really just trying to make it through the day most times. And especially in terms of your brain, it actually shuts down in some ways. It goes into survival mode. There's a thing called Stockholm syndrome, and it's also into this fawn response, FAWN, where you just have to do whatever you can, so your brain makes the decision for you to do whatever you can to stay alive. And sometimes this fawn can look like surrendering, people pleasing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Okay, I'll do whatever you want. I won't do it next time. And that decision made by your brain is not a conscious decision, but it's a survival mechanism to keep you safe. So this episode today is going to be able to help you understand everything about it and what you need to do, and if it's not for you, then for a friend, and how to be there to support. So getting into it, coercive control is also known as intimate terrorism. It's pretty hardcore, right? It can be like living with the enemy who says that they love you. It can feel like a hostage when you're constantly walking on eggshells, and it always seems like you're doing the wrong thing, or it's never good enough, or you're always being criticized, or there's just something, right? So to be aware as well, this is not gender specific. So contrary to what many may assume that women are the only victims, but it's quite common for males to be victims of domestic violence as well. So I know this is a podcast for mums, but even if you have friends who are males experiencing this, I want to be able to normalize it. So making the other person happy at all costs to avoid consequences, and that's that fawning, whether the consequences are real or perceived. So just to let you know that some same-sex relationships are not immune to coercive control either. It's just not spoken enough about in the general population. So sometimes a person can live within an abusive relationship for years and not realize they are actually experiencing abuse. Hard to believe? This is because coercive control can be harder to identify than the obvious physical signs of abuse. So when you've been put down enough, when you start to believe it, it's really quite difficult to then actually start to fight back and have your own sense of self and worth, because when you've been beaten down and beaten down and beaten down, that's pretty much all you know. And so hopefully all of this can be well known and then be known throughout Australia as well, especially. And Queensland needs to come into line with all of this. And I think at the moment Tasmania is the only Australian judicial system that has laws directly addressing coercive and controlling behaviours. So that all needs to change. Let's get into this a little bit deeper, okay? Coercive control is a strategic and constant manipulation to instill fear, okay? Becoming the dominant, making all the decisions with very real psychological consequences. So this is what I mean by sometimes it's a real threat or sometimes it's a perceived threat. But when you're living with someone who understands manipulation, these psychological consequences can be absolutely terrifying that you will try and avoid at all costs. And especially if you're a mama, you've got little baby ducklings, so you would rather generally take the brunt of the force of these psychological consequences to lessen the blow for your ducklings. So some examples are isolating from friends and family, monitoring your activity and what you are doing at all times, restricting your independence. It can also be controlling your body, and controlling your body can be this manipulation like you look fat today, or saying words about our clothes, or even derogatory. I'm not getting into it, but I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. So this is also how you look, and it can also feel degrading and belittling, okay? Coercive control is also limiting access to money, which can be detrimental, especially if you're at home with new babies. It can be blackmailing, jealousy, and possessiveness. This also looks like threats and intimidation, gaslighting. There was a whole episode on gaslighting before you can re-listen to. Another one which isn't really well known about coercive control is forcing traditional gender roles as worth. So before the relationship, I had identity as a woman, as a professional, as X, Y, and Z. But now with this, in coercive control, you're forcing my traditional gender roles as worth. So I now have to do the cooking, the cleaning, the housework, giving up my work, being the caregiver, not engaging with certain people that can disrupt all of this. There's also an awful manipulation tactic that's turning your own children against you. So especially if you've got a male father with male boy children, and then being able to essentially repeating the pattern by brainwashing the children with these phrases, psychological tactics, okay? It can also be dictating your sexual relationship, which is really difficult. And there's a thing, I don't really want to say it over the internet just in case you're in the car with your kids listening to this, but it's about marital abuse in the bedroom. And it can also be about threatening your kids or your pets. So this beautiful, kind, loving mother will pretty much do anything to protect her kids and pets. And if you feel powerless in this situation and you've been constantly manipulated for such a long time, you will do whatever it takes. And they are aware of that, and they will use that to your advantage. But this is all because they love you, right? Golly gosh. So mainly behind closed doors, they can be charismatic and charming to others around you. So behind closed doors, they're one way to you, and then out in the other realm, in real life, they can be charismatic and charming. So then even when you try and explain yourself or your perspective, people are like, no, what are you talking about? I can't see that. He's lovely. They're beautiful. This can also now borderline on similar characteristics to a personality disorder. And a personality disorder is generally motivated by intense insecurity, and then it's projecting onto others. So a simplistic explanation is putting others down to make themselves feel better in some way. And obviously, if it is a personality disorder, we have to understand why, and then how the severity of it on a scale, and then really how to protect ourselves, because sometimes, especially if they're not willing to get help or acknowledge, they're never going to change. And admitting they're never going to change can actually give us an ultimatum for ourselves. That if they're never going to change, if they're never going to seek help, if they're never going to acknowledge what's going on and the behavior they're using towards you, what does that actually mean for me long term? Yes. So as a mother, it's important to be aware of the signs of coercive control, which again is a form of abuse that can be really difficult to recognize. And that's why there's this shame associated with this, because it can be under the cover, under the rug, and not overtly available. So coercive control just to reinforce, is a pattern of controlling behavior that is used to dominate and manipulate your partner. And it can have serious long terms to your own mental health and well-being, as well as your children. So understanding they may be doing this on purpose, they may be aware of what they're doing, and they may be consciously doing it. Otherwise, it could be a learned behavior from their caregivers growing up. So their father may have done it and it was normal in their household, and as a part of his parental identity, he's now repeating that quote unquote, repeating that cycle, which is now that intergenerational trauma. Or it can be a deeper mental health issue, as said before, that they're not actually aware of, that they're doing these things like a robot because of their insecurities, but they're not actually aware of the huge amount of abuse they're perpetrating against their partner. And sometimes, if an honest conversation, if you feel safe enough to be able to do that, that can actually change everything, which is phenomenal. And obviously that's a best case scenario, which we're all hoping for. So I want you to give you some extra signs that your partner may be using coercive control, or your friend may be. So number 1, isolating. Your partner may be trying to isolate you from your family and friends to make you more dependent on them. So they may discourage you from growing out or talking to other people, or even if you have little kids, making you feel bad or guilty for leaving the kids. And it's that gender role again. If you're a good mum, you would choose your kids over going out or social life. Your kids need you more. So it's really that trying to be isolated. Number 2, monitoring. So your partner may monitor your every move, even if you don't realize they're doing it. So this includes checking your phone, checking your emails, your social media accounts. They may also follow you using GPS trackers and then keeping tabs on your whereabouts. It is absolutely terrifying when you go on eBay and having a look at the different tracking devices you can have, how small they are, tiny little cameras which are put around everywhere. Absolutely terrifying. And they've been there for such a long time and no one is aware. Good thing about this though, there are also blockers that you can purchase. So one block is to block any kind of technology around you that are surveillance or recording you. Or there's also little devices you can get. They market them when you go into hotel rooms. So when you go into hotel rooms or Airbnbs, if someone's already got a hidden camera, so you can purchase one of these little devices, and then when you go in the room, it will actually, you can shine the light around and it will then point out where the little camera is coming from. It's phenomenal. So even though you can understand it is terrifying technology and stalking, monitoring, there's also different ways you can combat it, and this is this holistic perspective of education and arming yourself and then getting back your control. And then all of this can lead to evidence. Number 3, criticism. Your partner may criticize you, belittle you, making you feel worthless and inadequate. Awful. They may also make fun of your appearance, your intelligence, or your abilities. And that's that if you keep getting told over and over and over and over again how worthless and inadequate you look a certain way, it's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. You eventually believe it. And then when you believe it, it increases your depression. You then feel stuck. You feel awful about yourself. And then you actually believe that no one else would want you. So then you stay because at least they want me, right? They love me. They're only saying this because they care. Number 4, financial control. So your partner may control your finances. So this includes limiting your access to money or forcing you into every single dollar that's accounted for. So when it's limiting your access to money, this is putting you on a hardcore budget. And then even withdrawing cash, giving you cash to spend this week and saying, well, without this, we will be broke, but not actually giving you access to the full picture of the actual budget, just giving you a physical budget each week. So, these are just a couple. Sound familiar? With all of this, knowing the signs and knowing what can be the first steps out of denial and into empowerment. So when I say denial, it's not an overly negative thing. So denial is actually a survival mechanism. It's a psychological survival mechanism we use to keep us emotionally safe. So if I'm traveling along this road in denial, at least I feel like I can cope, I can manage day to day. But then as soon as it dips down into the reality of what's happening, it makes me feel panic and overwhelmed because I'm out of denial into reality, which means I now need to do something about it. So I'll just go back into denial. Keeps me safe. So even when someone is in denial, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a coping mechanism to keep you emotionally safe. Also understanding that getting out of an abusive relationship can be complex. It's not as simple as going bye, leaving. No. Very, very complex because it's abusive. It's manipulation. It's coercive control. And that word before, it's intimate terrorism. Terrifying. It takes time, planning, and emotional resilience. So if you feel like you don't have the strength to leave, your partner has deliberately been disempowered you. So if you don't feel you have the strength to leave, it is evidence your partner has deliberately disempowered you. Know that it's not your fault. You did not choose this. You didn't go into the relationship choosing someone like this for you, or even a father of your child. So this can be the first step for you to start having compassion for yourself, that it's not my fault. I didn't choose this. I didn't do anything wrong. Everyone deserves respect, including me. So if I can help you to be mentally strong, it can help you with predictability and giving yourself back that control and empowerment within your life. And obviously reinforcing it's going to take time. So how can you start having compassion, building yourself up strong, finding ways to protect yourself and educating yourself so then at least in the future, when things get worse and you do try and leave, and obviously when you do try and leave, that's when things escalate. So that needs to be really, really importantly safeguarded and a huge contingency plan. If you don't know what a contingency plan is, it is, so when you have a flight, your flight attendants have a contingency in case of an emergency. So in case of emergency, the contingency is A, B, C, D, and everyone knows it. It is all planned out. So in case of an emergency, this is now what the procedure we need to follow. Okay? Let me help you get your own little contingency, right? But first, realizing, because I really, really, really want to reinforce it, that it is a form of domestic abuse and it does have serious long-term effects on your mental health. So the earlier you can plan your path forward and have this contingency plan, the better chance you have at success for yourself and for your kids. So if you were going to make a little contingency plan, here are some tips on how to either protect yourself or how to be able to plan your way out of it. So then it gives you a chance of success so that when you do leave and they will escalate, you can then prepare for that. So number 1, educate yourself about coercive control. So you're doing really well by coming to listen to me on this little podcast, which I'm grateful you're attending. So if you can actually understand the tactics used by your partner, it can help you recognize when they are being used against you. So even if you don't tell them that what they're doing, just having little mental notes about this is the tactic they use at this time, this is what they're doing, and this is how I can protect. Or you can be in denial, as I said, and just coast until you're ready to do something about it. Obviously, read up on the subject. If it's safe, talk to your friends and family members, and obviously professionals who can help you understand the dynamics of coercive control. So as said before, some of the tactics used is to look out for isolation from family and friends, which is difficult because I'm saying go and talk to them, but you're isolated. So it's like this awful catch-22, because now I feel like I have to do everything in secret, in private, which is awful, because then it's that constant fear, anxiety. Am I going to get found out? Are they going to then yell at me? Do they know that something's happening? Okay. Obviously, the surveillance, financial abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, psychological threats. So these threats can be real or perceived, the intimidation, and physical or sexual violence. Number 2, build up a support network. So this is very, very important. And even if this isn't in person, this can even be online or at school, or finding some form of support network for you. Because if you have a support network, it can help you feel less isolated and more empowered. Women are social beings, so we want to be able to harness into our own happiness, well-being, and strengths by being connected with other women. So if you can reach out to people who you trust, that can actually provide practical and emotional support. And some people aren't going to know what to do or say. So even if you just say to them, I'm not looking for your advice, I just want someone to listen. Could you please listen to me? Because when we want to reach out and talk to someone, without realizing, we already have an expectation of how they will respond. And if they don't respond the way that we expect, we can then be disappointed, a bit freaked out. We then shut down. We feel like, what's the point? Okay? But if we're able to articulate what our expectation is when devouring or expelling this information, then their response can be something that makes me feel safe and heard. So even if I'm about to tell you something, I just need some TLC, or I'm about to tell you something, I need some advice, or I just want to say something, can you just listen to me, because I've never told anyone before, okay? This can be very difficult if we feel we need to protect them in some way. So even if you feel like you still love them and you still want them in your life in some way, or you still want them to be a father involved in your children's life, we feel the need to protect them. And protecting them is not being able to express what we are authentically going through day to day. Otherwise, we can have so much shame and humiliation about this situation. So, the feeling like I should have known better. So I made this decision and now I need to live with it. So I don't need to whinge, I just need to deal with it every day. But by building a support network, it can be a great way to help you navigate through all of these challenges. So if you can identify your needs in where you need support, reaching out to those who make you feel safe. If you could even join a support group, whether it's online, in person, with school, it's a wonderful way to connect with others who are going through similar experiences that you are, so you don't feel alone. So it normalizes what you are. And then even survivor stories. Survivor stories are great because it gives you hope. Humans need hope. And if you can, seek professional help. So please don't be afraid to seek professional help from a therapist, a counselor, mental health professional, or anyone in the DV world. That can be really beneficial for you, and they see it all the time, day in, day out. So then there's no judgment, and they just want to be there for you and hear you and validate what you need. So remember that building a support network can take time, but obviously it's incredibly rewarding. So this is part of that contingency. Everything's not going to happen overnight. So starting to build these little blocks for you so that in the future, whatever you decide, you can protect yourself. Number 3, keep a record of incidences that occur. So if you're able to keep a record of events that happen, abuse that occurs, behavior that they engage in quite religiously or regularly, it can help you build a case in the future against your partner if you decide to seek legal action. And if you do legal action, obviously everything needs to be documented. So even if it's in a calendar or a diary, time and date, factual, what happened, when. So imagine having 4 years of that. That's beautiful evidence for yourself. And even if you never use it, at least you know it's always in your back pocket in case you need to. So these are all incidences that make you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, whether it's psychological threats or physical abuse. So even if this is not only for legal, but also for yourself to know that you're not crazy, that you're not exaggerating or making things up. This can be really validating for yourself, especially if you haven't told anyone yet. So if you can document everything that are happening, it can help you almost find a pattern and some kind of predictability in their other behavior. So some examples can be like when he's drinking and he does this, when he works long hours, and then if he's burnout, how then I'm punished for that. When his football team loses and when his football team wins, the difference in that. So if you can actually understand different patterns and cycles, it can give you a greater chance at success within yourself to be able to protect yourself and your kids. Number 4, as said, with your little network, seeking professional support. So even if you end up calling someone within a victims of domestic abuse hotline or someone within legal aid, and even if you want to call anonymously or contact them anonymously, if you can understand what support is out there, it helps me feel engaged that I'm not so alone. So number 5, obviously depending on the severity of your coercive control, your isolation, and if you have support. This is also really difficult if you're really vulnerable, such as disabilities, absolutely terrifying, or geographically isolated in a really, really rural town, or on huge property and you don't have access to anything. So if you're able to create a safety plan, it can help you prepare for emergencies like that contingency and protect yourself and your children. So a safety plan is worst case scenario. What do I do? Where do I go? What are safe places? If I need to leave quickly, and make sure that your children, depending on how old are they are, if they're almost aware of the plan. So this is where we meet at this time. We're going to leave a bag of clothes at school in your locker, and that's always a backup. At my mother's house, I put in an envelope every week $50, and now it's been a year, and so this is extra money for me to be able to save. So in the safety plan, if you Google it, DV safety plan, women, men, there are huge little templates that you can use that include bank accounts, telling work, and even connecting with Centrelink. And I think with Centrelink, if you're experiencing DV, they can give you emergency payments, and I think it's even with the Commonwealth Bank. So even if a safety plan includes contacting your bank and saying, I'm experiencing coercive control, I don't have access to A, B, and C, how can you help me? And what do you need for you to believe me? Because all of this is going to be he said, she says evidence. So how can you back yourself and your evidence? Mum, always remember, you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. Start having compassion for yourself, because you didn't choose this. This is not the life that you dreamed of. And you don't have to live like this. Don't be afraid to reach out for help if you're experiencing coercive control, that intimate terrorism. There are people who can support you and can help you protect yourself and your children before it's too late. I know it's really difficult, and if you're experiencing this for yourself, I understand more than you know. So there are always supports. You are never alone, and you are stronger than you give yourself credit for. You are smarter than what you actually believe, and your grit, your determination will be your predictors of success. Okay? We don't want to do anything that can prevent you from working or earning your own money from independence as well. So if you're able to do that, even if it's something online during the day when they're not home, there are a whole lot of different online things that you can do to be able to earn extra money. So affiliate programs, selling digital products, marketing campaigns, VA, virtual assistants, which is like a personal assistant but virtually, phone service, numbers, a whole lot of different things. So even though you're overwhelmed and you're terrified and you feel stuck, it's not the end. Maintain communication with your family and friends as much as possible. Even you are embarrassed, even if they don't have nice things to say sometimes, even if they are judging. But if they do love you, they will be there for you and they will stick around. If you can call a domestic violence hotline regularly, so you can actually be honest and speak about your concerns. So even if you call on a private number with a random name that's not your own, and then saying an address or a suburb or a town that you don't even live in, it will help you proactively practice verbally acknowledging what you are going through. If you can say it out loud, it can help us admit it to ourselves first. So that's numero uno, step 1, okay? Imagine doing that. Calling up a DV hotline, not using your name, calling off a private number and saying I live somewhere random, but this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm experiencing, and actually having that release of saying it, so it's not this denial secret that lives within you anymore. And that's what trauma is. Trauma lives in you, and if you don't resolve your trauma, that's when intergenerational trauma happens, and then your children are more likely to then repeat the cycle. So what are your motivations? How can I get you mentally strong? So there's going to be another episode in the future about intergenerational trauma. If it's your bestie that's going through all of this, now you can understand how difficult, shameful, embarrassing, complicated, and how it's not actually that obvious. If you can be a safe space for them to talk to when they are ready without pushing them, remember denial, honey, and not just giving up on them or being worried, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. Just be there and listen. It's really nice not to hold everything on your own. And you can share the load with your bestie. That's what besties are for. And obviously this is all without judgment or telling people what they need to do. Sometimes people are just fixers. You need to do this and you have to leave, and no, it's not that easy to just pick up and leave, okay? But the more we all talk about it, the more we can all help recognize the signs. No one deserves to live in fear. So I really, 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 really appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for listening to this whole episode and how heavy it is. So even after all of this, because it is so heavy, right, the coercive control, even if you want to do some form, I don't know if you're in your car, in your home, of shaking your fingers, right, putting your hands above your head, taking a breath in and out, and just kind of releasing all of this, because it was a lot. I don't want you to hold on to it. I want it to be really valuable information, but I don't want you to own it. So just accept it. You've heard it. You understood it. Don't own it. Let it go, release. And then even after this podcast, put on some nice music that can make you feel better or happy. If you've been really upset by all of this, please call someone, talk to someone, even if it's Lifeline or a domestic violence hotline. Even after all of this, it hits home. Even if you want to write something down and journal something to yourself, be honest with yourself in some way. So, you are amazing, Mum. I always want to be here for you so that you don't feel alone. We need to know how to protect you and make you feel safe. And if it's your bestie or your sibling, then how can we all rally together and work as a team? Because abuse thrives and grows in silence. If it's going to be silent and no one talks about it, that's when the abuse grows and grows until it's out of control. Alright, I'll stop talking now. I'll leave you alone. I hope you have a lovely day. Look after yourself. Use all those self-care strategies, even if it's listening to a comedian like Ali Wong. You know, she's my fave. Getting something and then having a little bit of sunshine, feet in the grass, some nice healthy food, cup of tea, watching some trash, which is my favourite, or comedy, to shake all of this heavy stuff off. Alright, have a lovely day. I'll speak with you soon. Thank you for your time. Bye. If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire podcast, and for that, I would like to thank you for your support. So you can find me on Instagram or Facebook at supportivetherapy_, and then you can find heaps of free resources online at www.supportivetherapy.com.au. So if today you did find my information useful, please leave a review and subscribe. By leaving a review, it's a value exchange. It's good karma. So I value your support just as much as you value my free information. And if you liked it, other mums can like it as well, hopefully, and then it can hopefully start a huge movement of people valuing mothers the way that they need to be valued. So please feel free to let me know what topics you would like to see in future episodes. Always feel free to get in touch with me in the comments. Otherwise, follow me on Supportive Therapy social media networks. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful day, you beautiful mum.